Alrighty, we are back. So we ended off talking about how Sam just needed 5 votes. And did you want to explain where you think those 5 votes could have come from? I know you were saying
Yeah,
he just needed the two Luvu and the three Gata.
right. Because
What's your
in
point?
reality, I mean, obviously the problem was that Genevieve wasn't with them, right? But
Yeah,
they didn't know that. But even without Genevieve, right? So if you had Sam, Andy, which Andy seemed like he would be willing to go either way, right? You have Rachel, you have Sol and Teeny. There's your five.
yeah,
And with that, you're good. And so even though the fact that like they thought the problem was that none of those people besides Rachel, right, really knew. Now, here's the interesting thing. We actually got to hear a lot of the sound bites of the live tribal. That's something that's new that they've been doing where they've edited that in for us to hear. But there was one part in the live tribal when Sam turns to Rachel and says, "Will you vote Sue with Gata and Lavo?" And Rachel is we can't hear what she says. And so it's
Mhm.
very interesting. So obviously there's something in there to show what Rachel's true motives are and who she's trying to be with, because I think that is a pivotal moment. Whatever she said in response to Sam is clearly what turned the tables back that made Sam realize he didn't have Rachel. So
Yeah,
I don't know what her chances are. I don't know where she's thinking and if this is going to play out for her, but to me, it seemed like a mistake because I think that was their chance to gain the power.
mhm.
And I
Yeah.
don't know if they'll have that chance again.
There wasn't a world where Genevieve was not voting for Saul going into this. She was bold-faced lying during the live tribal, giving them hope, acting like she was going to. Something I found very interesting, which makes me nervous for Gabe, is Teeny leans down. Teeny knows that there's a plan for Saul. Teeny asks Gabe. Apparently, they're saying, Saul, did you know about this? Gabe, I had no idea. I had no idea about what? What? They're saying Saul's name? And then everybody votes Saul out. Do you think that Teeny, okay, here on out, Teeny doesn't trust Gabe, obviously. I feel like that is a big misstep in for Gabe. A big misstep. That was a bold-faced lie to Teeny. Bold-faced lie.
I I get where you're coming from, but I think Teeny is going to be more preoccupied with the bold-faced lie from Genevieve because Genevieve is supposed to be her remaining ally. And Genevieve even said, hey, when we pull this off, I'm going to have to do some relationship repairing with Teeny. Um, at some point, it obviously became clear that Genevieve and I can't remember if this came out in an exit interview or whatever, but at some point somebody told them, "Hey, Genevieve's the one behind this," and so they knew. So Sol actually knew going into the vote that that
Genevieve
he
was
thought
behind it.
Genevieve, and so I think that's going to be the bigger problem for Teeny. Um, I don't. I'm so confused by Teeny's edit because at one point it seems like Teeny is in the center of everything and is friends with everybody. But has Teeny ever gotten what they wanted for a vote?
No, yeah, I think that's the issue. I think people were saying that Andy had maybe similar to the Charlie Brown edit, but I think we could be seeing that from Teeny. What is going Teeny's way so far, like you're saying? Um, but the thing is, there's a lot of game left. Maybe Teeny's plan is to wait to make those moves, um, until, she really needs to.
And I think you're right because everybody still does very much love Teeny. And
Hmm.
so at
A
some
lot of
point,
social capital, a lot of
yeah,
social capital.
I think at some point if Teeny were to insist, hey, this is what I want, I think people would listen to her. And
Yeah.
so we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see how that plays out.
If you were Sue or Rachel, would you have played your idol during this? Or do you think the numbers were too solid to like, did Rachel know? Was any of this smoke and mirrors, do you think?
I think Rachel has a very good gut because clearly, she's been able to read the room. And so I think she felt secure enough. because there wasn't just a one name. Because I think that's where it gets suspicious, right? When everybody is giving you one name and there's no alternative, that's because you're the alternative, right? But there,
Yeah.
because she was clearly hearing, no, we're doing this, no, we're doing this, I think she had to have known that she was okay. Sue's an interesting spot because hers was that alternative vote.
Yeah.
Now, the only person who supposedly was with her that would have found that out would have been Genevieve. And so I don't know if Genevieve had motive to go back and then tell Sue. They're saying you, but she seemed now. Is it possible, Nick, that Sue's idol is buried somewhere? Is it possible that she, because remember how she still had the whole thing with the red paint and that she kept it in her bag with the red paint still?
I
Is it
think she
possible
has
that she
possession
buried
of
it
her idol.
somewhere?
I think
Do you,
we would know if she left her idol back at camp. She would have reached into her pocket, like she would have reached at tribal, she would have reached into her pocket like this, and we would have seen her go or something.
but I think she knows like that she buried it somewhere and she can't remember where it is. Is there a world where she has forgotten where she has placed her
No,
idol?
she's 45. She's young
I
and
know, but
spry. Her memory is still firing on
But
all cylinders.
45-year-olds, I know from experience, 45-year-olds can start to forget things. It's still very, very young.
It is.
And I meant by 40 by experience, I mean because I have a lot of friends who are 40.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right, right. But did Sue hear her name and then still hold on
That's
to the idol?
that's what I don't think we know.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I again, who would have said it? I think the only person would have said it, told her would have been could have been Genevieve. Because they were the ones that had told Genevieve that's the possibility. So, but super gutsy and it paid off.
Yeah.
But again, is it because a consensus vote is clearly something more than just shenanigans, right? So there had to have been some assurity that this wasn't even going to be close. It wasn't close.
No. I mean, again, twists equals conservative gameplay. That's what we got.
Yeah,
More, I mean,
that's a good point.
there was okay, one person lost their vote. This still seemed like a very strategic episode, even though it really was a consensus vote. Um, this felt the most like, oh my goodness, what is going to happen? Even though it ended up being what it like 9-1 or whatever it
Nine to
ended up
one.
being.
Well,
Yeah,
8-1, 8-1,
eight to
because we're
one.
only 9 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, 8-1. Um, okay, I don't know why I had this written down. So we talked about how we think Sam could face backlash from the Tuku for throwing out
Awesome.
multiple of their names. Um, did Kyle during that live tribal bring up Sue's name? I have it written down that
Say
Kyle
that one more time. What was the question? I
did.
feel like teeny right now. What was the question?
No, yeah, did did Kyle during that live tribal bring up Sue's name? Because I have written down Kyle might face backlash for trying to put it on Sue. I don't know why I wrote that.
I I
I can't remember if he might have heard her name.
did you miss right? Did you mean Sam might feel
I don't know. I feel like we might have heard Kyle be like, "Oh, Sue's name is out there. Okay, okay." I don't
Sam
know.
Tactical, Sam tells Andy it's Sue. Teeny tells Genevieve about the soul plan, and so they need to vote Sue. Genevieve disappointed. Tribal chaos. I don't have anything about Kyle.
Okay, maybe
But
that
are you
was
thinking that
weird note.
that's why? Because the previews were showing that Sue's super mad at Kyle again. Is that
Well,
what you're
I think
thinking?
that's more um about the early stage of the game. Sue is still holding that grudge, but of course,
Yeah,
Kyle is going to win immunity because
so it's not
he was
gonna matter.
targeted in the next time on Survivor. Um,
There be a world also where Sue is just acting to not show that they are actually all fine and all together?
Possibly, but I do think there's that crack there,
That
genuine
she
crack.
really is mad.
I do think the
Okay.
only real core alliance, genuinely in this game right now, like will vote with each other, um, would be Gabe, Caroline, and Sue. I think those are the only three that you could count on them all three to vote together right now. And I think historically that means they will go far.
I
Um,
agree, but
That's
here's the
why I
problem that
don't have a lot of hope for some of these. outer players like Rachel, Sam,
Yeah,
and Teeny, they're
yeah,
not integrated. They're not integrated.
yeah.
But then again, who knows where the cracks really are?
But here's the problem. We saw nothing. So there, Caroline had not even had, I don't think she'd even had a confessional yet. She got, so I think everybody ended up getting at least from what I could count, Sue only got one confessional this whole episode. Caroline ended up with three, but one of them was she was just talking about the Jenga game, the card stacking game. Nothing, and it was just
Situational.
information. It was just, and kind of like Sam had done part of the narrating. He had started off the narration, but Caroline is just, oh, we're doing this, no substance.
Yeah, situational
Once it fell,
content.
then we got some more of her strategy. Just the fact that she wants Kyle but doesn't have a vote. That's all we heard. We don't know about what she's thinking. We don't know what Sue's thinking other than and so and on the other hand, we have Gabe who has been, to me, Gabe is the subtle Rome. Like
Yeah, I
he
agree
has
actually.
very, very similar motives, very, very similar desires and wants and playing hard and fast, but he's been able to hide it and he's been able to mend the relationships where Rome was just so much more in your face and rude. I feel like Gabe is so much more subtle. So I think Gabe might be, more like the Tony player that is able to
Yeah.
play hard and hard, but everybody still is okay with him. So
Yeah, Gabe
I
would
think
love.
Gabe's chances are looking really good unless people decide like they were supposed to target him this time
Yeah,
until he got immunity. But
Gabe would love to wrestle hands his way to the end. Take the two
Mhm,
people
mhm.
that have been, kind of following behind him the whole time.
Yeah,
He would love that. Unfortunately, I think his threat is actually too big. Um, just from
mhm,
what I can gather. His name has been thrown out a few times.
yeah.
Um, I think Caroline and Sue would turn on it. They would vote with Gabe, but if it thick like through thick and thin, they would they would turn on Gabe, I think. Because not yet.
I think
Not
Caroline might,
yet.
but I don't know Sue would. I don't think Sue
Okay,
would because I think that is her true number one, even more than Caroline.
really.
I
Yeah,
do.
I don't think they would turn on him yet because they want to use him as a shield, but I
Sure.
think to them he could be expendable. Um,
Mhm.
on that note, talking about Caroline's edit, we saw Sam getting very emotional throughout this episode. Did you notice that? He
Mhm.
cried on camera, I think more than once. And it kind of reminded me of Kenzie from 46, who got a similar edit. We saw her being emotional a lot. And, a lot of people say it's not good to cry on Survivor. What I'm curious about is I wonder, is it because we know that like the pairs, like every other season is similar. Like 47 right now is similar to 45. Do you think it's a similar crew that edits and like produces these seasons? Because the um some people may have a certain editing style. Dee's edit from 45 was very Dee is the strongest player this whole time. She gets no negative. We see none of her weakness. This whole
Mhm.
time, it's for my family. I'm a strong, independent woman this whole time. But then the next season, we see Kenzie saying, I'm a personable person. I have an emotional side. That's a part of my game. Is that just these winners are different people, or is it we're getting different edits based on the people? Is it we get different edits based on who's editing it? Because I think that this episode for Sam could actually boost his winner equity because of that emotional content. What are
That is
your thoughts on that?
fascinating. Yeah. No, I think, well, emotional content has been part of, well, as far as following the edit, that has been like a requirement for being a winner.
Yeah,
And so I think that's definite, a definite possibility there. Although you likened him to Kenzie, and I was actually thinking that Teeny was more like Kenzie in that not personality wise, but the fact that the same sort of idea where I mean, like, what votes was Kenzie driving? Remember, Kenzie actually was trying to target Tiffany at one point, and
mhm,
it didn't work, right? And then she had to pivot, and that's where I was thinking that Teeny isn't necessarily so much a Charlie Brown because she is the likable. And even though things aren't going so great, it just seems like she's just being kind of like going with the flow, very much like how Kenzie was able to survive and work her way through and not be the next biggest threat, but be well liked by everybody so that she gets the votes at the end. And that's where I don't know. I think even though, like I said, we were saying before that Teeny hasn't actually had her move yet, what could we point to as what was Kenzie's move?
Yeah,
And it's but besides being there and making it through to the next day and being the most well liked person left standing, which
yeah,
could be her way to it. Although it would be fascinating. I don't know if there's a world where she and Sam both make it to the end, because that would be, I think Sam could talk his way around everything, which could drive them crazy if he's trying to mansplain things. Or it could be like, oh wow, he did it, because she is a little bit does present herself as a little more docile. So, but that
yeah.
could just be so that again, she's not the biggest threat. I do have a question for you about the live tribal council. If you can go back there for a second, there was a point where Teeny mouthed to somebody, something doesn't feel right. She because this was before everything started blowing up. Could you tell who she was? Do you even remember that? And could you tell who she said it to? Or did they leave that in particularly vague, or who do you think she would have said it to?
I can only assume Saul because they seemed so paired up this episode. It could have been to Genevieve, you know. Um,
Mm,
just in closing, I think that live tribal, I was saying how it might not have been necessary had they had more time. In this situation, I think it was Saul needed that live tribal to even have a chance, you know.
yeah.
Um, I'm curious how often live tribals turn into conservative gameplay. Um, I don't
Well,
know the statistics on that, but
well, I think somebody, I think there had been more live tribals than what we've even seen, but
mm,
because like nothing came out of it, they were kind of edited out. But I think sometimes I do feel like the live tribal, some people are doing it just for the sake of doing it, just to be kind of cool and awesome and oh, like we did a live tribal. Tonight did not feel like that. Tonight felt like it was necessary because of the
yep,
craziness of it. And that's why, I mean, that's why nobody was even paying attention to Jeff's questions, right? And you get the quote from
yeah,
Jeff, we've got all night, because they were just not ready,
yeah.
and
I just know Jeff was so frustrated when he's just talking
yeah,
he's preaching to the choir. No one was listening. They were so
nobody was listening.
stressed.
I wasn't even I was trying to pay attention to everybody else. Like
Same.
that's why it was super funny when Teeny said, "Wait, what was the question again?" Because I was
Yeah,
like, "Yeah, what was the question?" Because I was trying to watch what all these other people behind you were doing, and it's like, okay, it's just time. It was so predictable that that was going to happen. But
yeah.
poor Saul, he seems to
Poor
definitely have been
Saul.
the victim here, and uh, I don't know. What do you think he could have done differently? What do you think he could have done to save himself?
He needed more time. Sam was trying to bail him out. They
What was the path though? What would have been the path to even if he had more
to
time?
the
What would have
end,
been no to survive just this vote?
like you were saying, get that five into shape. Saul, Teeny, Andy, Sam, Rachel. Is there a world where Andy wasn't voting for Saul? I don't know. If the plan was more solidified, maybe Andy wants to flip flop. Maybe he's more in with Tuku now. I don't know. Um, just quickly in closing now,
Okay,
um, the final note I have, and then we can do predictions. And this kind of part of predictions is I think Teeny is waiting to strike, still in the running. Like we've talked about. I think she's just waiting her turn. I think she'll be in the finale. Along with Andy. How is Andy in such a good position? He's getting his way, but like this was not on him at all. He can't claim this as his move, but it's just another week we don't hear Andy's name.
yeah.
Um, I thought that was so
Last got
funny.
to
Like
standing.
he's so integrated somehow.
Crazy,
It's wild.
crazy.
All right. Do you have any thoughts of what could happen next week or
Well,
in 2 days?
Yeah, so well, I think there's definitely the world where Kyle doesn't win immunity and he does just become again a consensus vote, which I could definitely see happening. You were right about Gabe could be that target. Genevieve, because she painted herself as the next biggest thing, right? She becomes the next biggest takedown. Um, I don't I don't know. Do they go after Sue again? I feel like the Sue target was just because she was the best alternative in case there was an idol or something like that. But why does she need to? Although once your name has been put out there, it's often easy to have it
Latched onto.
back again. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. Caroline has always been talking about taking out Rachel. I don't know where that would go. No, I feel like this is pretty unpredictable. If I had to predict, I would say that we're probably seeing Kyle or Genevieve going. What do you think?
All right. I would love to see an episode where production is out of it. We get to see where this tribe really lies, and we see, you know, does Genevieve like what does Genevieve do next? Does Andy keep playing the middle? Where like are any alliances finally solidified? I think it will be another episode of chaos. I would I just want to see three people as the final three that all genuinely have potential to win. That's what I would love from the season. I would love a satisfying winner. Um, I would love a competitive final tribal. That's really what I ultimately want. And I think
What's
there's
your
a,
ideal? Who's your ideal for
I
the
think
final three then?
Sam, Rachel, Genevieve, or Sam, Genevieve, Teeny, or any combination of that, I think would be really fun. Rachel,
You don't
Genevieve,
see
Teeny, that would be
you don't
really
see
fun.
Gabe having a chance of being in there?
I just think his threat is too big, to make it that far. I don't know. I
Although
really
if he does,
Sue is really
if
the
he
only
does
no
make
left.
it, if Gabe makes it that far, don't you think he will have the strongest case of how the heck did he make it that far?
Yeah, and with his personality and everything, yes. I don't think we see someone like Gabe going far in the new era. We don't see someone like Sam making it that far in the new era.
True, very true.
Then again, we don't see someone like Rachel making it that far in the new era. Yeah, totally unpredictable. I agree with what you said. I could see Gabe being targeted next, actually. Kyle if he doesn't win immunity. Sam for throwing out the Tuku vote. Genevieve, historically being the next threat up. Rachel because her threat is already so high. Pretty much Caroline and Andy aren't going home next episode. That's all I know. That's all I know.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, so does that mean Caroline and Andy are final three?
And that would be boring.
And that would be boring.
Yeah.
Unless there's a world where Caroline does come across as a, has a masterful, which, think Australian Survivor with the person's game that you did not understand where they were doing, and then all of a sudden has the most masterful final tribal. Does
Who
Caroline
knows?
have it in her?
Who knows? Alrighty.
It'd be fun to see that again, though. It'd be fun to see that.
It would. Wrapping things up. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. If you've made it this far, hopefully I've edited this together correctly and got it out by Tuesday night, hopefully. Um, I plan to keep doing this Zoom, whether it's with you or, hopefully a special guest in the future. Um, but that's all I have for the episode 9 recap. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, everything like that. And I will see you all next week.
Great
Thank you.
job.